Welcome, everybody, to the podcast. Great to be with y'all today, guys. How we doing?
Doing well.
Yep.
Yep. What does yep mean?
Yep.
He's neutral.
Rather non-committal there. I think Greg's here. So,
I am here.
Yep. Good to be with everyone. I said it too. Yep. Yep.
It's contagious.
Good to be back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good service this week.
Fun weekend.
Good time.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
There was a lot of people.
Yep.
Yep.
Happy 100th anniversary
It was.
Yeah.
to the church.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. I thought that's what you meant.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of tech bugs.
Ugh.
Yesterday was tech. It was bugs and everything.
It's bugs
day.
and everything.
Yeah.
We had problems with the plumbing yesterday. We
Yep.
had problems with the golf carts yesterday.
Yeah.
We had problems with video yesterday. What
Online
else?
stream. Yep.
It's crazy. People may not realize this from the outside looking in, but there just seems to be days when everything tech goes
it's
wrong.
It's never. Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be one thing. It just
No.
seems to be you have a day when 15 things go wrong.
That's
That
how
was
it was.
yesterday.
So very thankful for all of our production team and online team
Yeah.
and guest services team. And,
Great bunch.
And janitor as well.
Got
So,
it. Battle through.
Great bunch. Every staff
It
was
was.
dealing with some breakdowns
Oh, man.
yesterday.
But, I was having a conversation with somebody, and they were just saying, so how's things going? And it just kind of caught me in a moment where it was like in the middle of everything that's going on. It's like, it's all going terrible is what it is. But, it was also one of those moments to kind of swing it back around. It's like, you know what? Yeah, we got some things that are not quite going right, but at the same time, there's a lot that's still going well. So
Absolutely.
try to look
yes.
on the bright side of some of
Oh,
that
yeah.
stuff as well.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
God was still moving, and good
yeah.
things were still taking place, and
Oh,
people
yeah.
were still saying yes to him. So all in all, a good day.
I get to look out, and see the hands that go up at the end about, saying yes to Christ.
Mhm.
And a couple of those really touched me yesterday. A couple of those, I just looked at people and I thought, that's incredible that person's saying yes to Jesus today. It's
Right.
just really a life-changing moment when you come to know him. And I guess it's so easy to get used to that. We see hands most every week going up, and typically just about every service somebody says yes to Christ. And I guess it's easy for that to become commonplace.
Right.
But there's nothing common or ordinary about that. It's
Not
a
at all.
life-changing moment. And it was our 100th anniversary. Yeah, it was very low key, because we've just walked through this, this hurricane and the aftermath of that, which we're seeing so much good happen coming out of that. And we launched a series called Pressing On, and we've wanted to launch that. We've been planning that for a long time to launch this at our 100th anniversary, but Pressing On for us right now has turned into more pressing through this season, and just standing with families and partnering with them to get their lives back, and some of them homes back and cars back and businesses, and just people are still struggling with that. So we pivoted away from some big vision items,
Right.
and we didn't discard those by any means. They're still there, and we're still going to do those, but we did pivot off of that onto more, let's rebuild our community. God spoke that to me, and I've said it several times, but the Lord just spoke to my heart and said, you guys take care of the community, I'll take care of the church.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you have to do in the church.
Absolutely.
You take care of the ministry, you do what God's called you to do. Of course, He's taking care of all of it,
Right.
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
like you put your focus here, and I'll take care of the things you can't focus on right now.
You've said that several times now, that statement that you felt like God spoke to you about, take care of the community and I'll take care of the church kind of deal. And we've said that, and it sounds good, but I want to kind of pause there for just a moment. God spoke that to you kind of in the midst of everything that was going on in the initial stages of the hurricane relief. And I kind of wanted to just kind of pick your brain a little bit on that. Oftentimes we all are searching for God to speak something to us, whether it's in the middle of coming out of a storm or anything like that, or just about life or a season that we're in. We're constantly looking for God to speak something to us. How are you able to distinguish that was God's voice speaking to you, or the Holy Spirit speaking to you, versus maybe just some own thoughts that you have in your head?
Yeah, that's true. You can make up thoughts in your head and all that. Some of that just comes with experience, with walking with God and hearing from Him. Those things just come in a moment. This particular one, I remember the thought hit me. I was out in the parking lot. I could tell you the place I was standing out in the parking lot.
Here at the church.
Here at the church.
Okay,
It was during
yeah.
all the activity and all the supply distribution and every other 1,000 thing we had going on those first 2 weeks of recovery, I was standing out there about where the asphalt meets the gravel out there, and I remember just kind of looking around at everything that was going on, and I was just thinking about, we got to refocus for right now. We've got to just pause a few things and focus on dealing with this. And I was thinking, just how are we gonna do these vision initiatives and all the transitions that we have, because we're growing. That's the thing that's driving a lot of this, is we're growing in number of people that come here, and there's not a lot of place to put them, and we're just trying to figure all that out and launch vision to take care of that and expand. And I was just struggling with we've had this huge task going on here of blessing our community. And it just came to my heart in an instant. Your focus ought to be always on reaching your community. Always ought to be doing what's right for your community, for your congregation. Just be in ministry and let God take the rest. Let God do what you can't do, in situations where you feel like you've got to shift. And there's such a need in front of us right now.
Right.
We're starting to get back to normal, but there's still so many families whose roads are washed out that can't get to their homes, who have to find a place to live. That's a huge challenge here right now of people who, let's say they rented their house and the landlord is not able. The landlord may have 20 houses, and they're not evil people. They've just got a huge deal themselves.
They're being
with
overwhelmed
insurance,
as well with everything.
and they're just overwhelmed. And we've heard it that some whole neighborhoods, we were in a mobile home park, trying to give them some relief several weeks there, and they just said the landlord said he's going to take care of it, but it's going to be a while to be able to get all this fixed. So people are at least finding a temporary place to live. So much of that going on, and thinking about leading the church at the same time. I've said this before, that a lot of people, not just us, a lot of people think they've got two jobs right now. You're leading your business, but if your business is anywhere in the service, like emergency services, they've got their typical work to do, but they've got a ton more to do because of this hurricane,
Right.
So the thought just come to me, God just ministered to my heart in a way that the Holy Spirit does, to say, hey, you do what I've called you to do, and I'll take care of the rest. And I have to keep reminding myself of that.
Sure. That's good. And, it's at the same time, it's, to kind of tie it in a little bit to where we spent some time in Scripture this past week, kind of coming about the idea that, hey, when it comes to pressing on, one of the key things is to know your values, and the one thing that Paul came back to was knowing Christ, right? Was knowing Him, and you don't get to have that relationship with Christ where He can speak those words to you to kind of give you direction and vision for your life without spending time knowing Him and being known by Him. And man, that's a great word for our church. I think it's also a great word for so many different individuals as well. You keep doing what I've called you to do, and I'm gonna take care of the rest.
A huge part of hearing from God is experience.
Yeah.
You learn someone just by being around them. When the kids were little, we had stairs in our home. There were wooden stairs that led upstairs, and I could be in the living room. There were my wife and two kids living with us. I could be in the living room and someone walked down the stairs, and I knew who it was by their walk. You know what I mean? I could easily pick between the three because I lived with them. You know what I mean? I could tell, even walking down the hallways, I could hear them walking around, and I knew who was coming just because I had that experience of being with him. As you listen for the voice of the Lord and interact with Jesus, you learn His voice, and you learn what it sounds like and what it feels like in your heart. I've never heard an audible God. I've heard people say they heard God speak audibly, and that He can certainly do that. I've never had that. I've never had handwriting in the sky or anything like that. It's usually just this still small voice in my heart, and it sounds like my Father. I've learned to discern between my thoughts and His.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
My thoughts will lead me negative most of the time. My thoughts will trend over to fear and what might go wrong. God's thoughts are these assuring thoughts that come in, and it feels differently.
That's good.
I was talking with somebody the other day, and I was processing through a place where I was just thinking, I could have done a better job here. This was a mistake. I shouldn't have done this quite this way. And the person asked me a really valuable question. They said, is that guilt or conviction? Because that's two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Guilt is shaming. Guilt is a burden. Guilt is just it's weakening and debilitating, you know. Conviction, there's a hope in conviction.
Right.
Conviction is, yep, that's not right. I have something better for you.
Wow.
You know, so has nothing to do with the message this week,
No,
but
not at
maybe
all.
it
That's
does.
good.
And the fact that Paul, back to your point, Paul saw that knowing Jesus was more valuable than anything in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing we tried to get across is that Paul was this incredible person before he became the Apostle Paul. You know, they called him Saul then, and he was a Pharisee, and he listed his whole length of requirements, his whole pedigree, his whole list of accomplishments to the church at Philippi in chapter 3 there. You know, he said, I'm circumcised the 8th day of the tribe, of the stock of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, you know, a Hebrew of the Hebrews, concerning the law, Pharisee, concerning zeal, persecuting the church. He just said all these things. He said, I've got all this going for me. I've got a lot of accomplishments. I've got a solid ancestry. He was making a particular point to the Jews,
Right.
defending his Jewish ancestry for a particular reason. But he was saying, I've got this in my behalf. I've got this on my behalf. I've done this. I've accomplished this. But all those things that were gained to me, I've counted loss for the sake of knowing Christ.
Pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Really is. Nothing in life stacks up to knowing Jesus. I don't care what you have
Right.
or what you've accomplished. That's the message there.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for us to understand that as we talk about pressing on.
Yeah, I saw like a video online recently of another pastor talking about like people get caught up in searching for their calling and their mission.
Mhm.
Like, I want to know my purpose in this world. And he's like, most of the time, what they mean by when they're asking that is, what is my career going to be? You know, am I going to be a father or a mother? Am I going to do great things? When really, like, at the core of that question, what is my calling, is to have a relationship with God, and that's it. And now God calls us to different things, but sometimes people get too caught up in the specifics of what they want to do or what they feel like they need to do, that they miss the main thing, which you talked about, like the one thing, which is to have a relationship with God, and everything else comes out of that relationship. It's not the other way around, that your things you do, your accomplishment, your stuff grants you a relationship with God. It's the other way around, that out of your relationship comes everything. Comes your career, comes your family, your friendships, your relationships. But people get those mixed up too many times. They think, I'm honoring God by what I'm doing. And you do that, yes.
Sure.
But really, it's the other way around. You honor God because you're in a relationship with Him. And when you're walking with Him, the things you are doing will naturally be God honoring, no matter where you are.
That's good. That's really is. It makes it so simple.
Yeah.
I remember many years ago, and this is another one of those moments when I just felt the voice of the Lord, that the ministry was getting really complicated and it was growing, and there were complex decisions to be made. And that's part of being in a growing organization. The decisions get a little more complex.
Yeah.
And there are more effects of decisions in places, and you weigh it all out and you struggle with it. Some years ago, and we're in another place like that now, some years ago, I remember the Lord speaking to my heart and said, all you have to do today is just serve me. Just keep it as simple as that.
Right.
Some people may think that's simplistic, but I think you have to approach it that way, that I'm just serving Jesus here. And I'm going to serve Him with what's in front of me. The other trap there is trying, as you said, to think about what your ministry is 10 years down the road, or career. When I went into Bible college many years ago, I went to a Bible college, and I knew I was called to ministry. I just didn't know what.
Right.
And there were like 3 ministry degrees that I remember, like for full-time ministry, probably more, but I remember 3. There was to be an evangelist, which for those that don't listen, that don't know what that means, it's a person who goes around and preaches in different churches and shares the gospel that way. So an evangelist, a pastor, or a missionary. And I started off being an evangelism major because it's all I knew to do, and I knew I wanted to preach, so it's just all I wanted to do. So I did the evangelism for about 2 semesters. And then I just fell in love with the missions department and the missionary teachers, so I switched my degree over to be a missionary. And so my studies were to go to a foreign field and be a missionary. So I really felt to do that. And so I went for a couple years, and then I've spent 30 years now being a pastor. So the 1-degree program I did not get into is what I've done for 30 years.
Right.
I took one class in Bible college on how to be a pastor, maybe two. One bled over into that. So I took 2 courses out of all my undergraduate work was in how to be a pastor.
Yeah.
Some might think that it shows. It may have. I do wish I had. God knew what I needed the whole time, but
Sure.
if I could go back, I would do that. But the whole point is, I remember all of us at the school were just struggling with what am I going to be doing 10 years from now? What am I going to be in 20? And you can think about that all day long. The fact is that serving Jesus is a very today thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's totally what can I do right now? And I said this a couple weeks ago, and it really resonated with people and helped people a lot. They've told me since I said it. I said, do what you can with what you have right where you are. Right now in the hurricane, just minister to the people in front of you. You know, one of the things we're dealing with now is just hearing so many stories from so many places, and it's so overwhelming. We're thinking, okay, what can I do for this town or that town? And God's called us simply to minister to the needs that are right here that He brings in front of us,
Right.
and serve Him there. All part of knowing Christ.
Yep.
Which
definitely.
is, which what Paul said was the most important thing. Everything
Yeah,
else
The
was
most important thing.
Everything else was considered rubbish,
Yeah.
garbage, dung, whatever word you want to throw in there.
Yeah.
Kind of let that force as being the most important thing, the thing that we need to strive for.
It's the only thing you carry through into eternity with you is a relationship with Jesus.
Right.
You know, nothing else crosses that line with you. Nothing. Nothing. Money certainly doesn't.
Yeah.
Possessions don't. I watched a video the other day of a very famous rock and roll singer, and someone did a tour of his home, and it wasn't any kind of a superstar. It was just a famous pioneer in rock and roll, and somebody just found his home somewhere and found some of his relatives and took a tour. And they went through the home, and it wasn't really that extravagant or anything, but they showed the gold records and the mementos, and there were picture frames, and there were autographs and all kinds of things all over the wall. There were some of the musical instruments in a music room. And I thought to myself, this person went all over the world and did everything, but they're gone now.
Right.
And all that's left is a house full of pictures. That's it. Those gold records don't mean a thing now.
Right.
All that stuff means nothing to them. I mean, their family treasures them, and people still remember that. Here, none of that went. This person is gone, and this is left. And then they were showing a clip of this person's funeral. I guess I just went down the rabbit hole, and it's a very simple funeral. And I thought to myself, this person was known all over the world. Their funeral was exactly like 100 funerals that I've done.
Mm-hmm.
They went out the exact same way. I've done 100 funerals, and I've seen funerals that were a lot nicer than theirs was. It was very simple, very humble.
Right.
But in the end, there was a casket being put into a hearse by 6 people, and they went to a very humble grave. And I do funerals so often, I'm very familiar with all this. The
Sure.
thing was there, the AstroTurf that they lay out sort of stuff,
Right.
and the mechanism there to lower the casket into the grave was exactly the same as I've seen at funerals of people who had nothing.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, wow, this person had all this, but in the end, they came to the very same place.
Right.
And I heard that the person actually came to know Christ near the end of their lives,
Okay.
which was really good news.
Right.
But in the end, all you got's Jesus.
Yep.
And that's the only thing assured to stay with you.
Absolutely. It's good.
Knowing Him's so valuable.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love the City Slickers reference.
We
Yeah.
talk about City Slickers, and at any time I mention a movie, I get people upset with me because there's probably something in there that wasn't. There's probably some language or something. But,
yeah. General disclaimer. Maybe look at
Every
the
time.
rating, decide if it's appropriate.
I tell you what,
I
I
don't
just-
think it's that crazy. Am I
tell you what,
wrong?
I
I
don't remember now. It's
anything
been so
wild
long.
in it, but
I tell you
love
what,
the
I
movie.
quit doing several years ago. I just quit doing it. I went to a movie and I liked it, and I said something about it on social media, And then
I remember
somebody
this.
got on there and was upset because of some language that was in
Yeah.
there that I missed. I was watching the movie and I missed it, and I thought, I've just got to get out of that thing. I just don't recommend them typically. City Slickers was funny, and we use illustration of Curly and the one thing.
Yeah.
And I had a girl come up to me, like a teenage girl, come up to me and talk for a minute after the service was over, and she said, "This is the craziest thing ever." She said, "But we watched City Slickers for the first time in our house this weekend."
Oh, wow.
And she said, "When you had everybody hold up their finger, that's what I thought about."
Yeah.
And when you said
And then
City
you said
Slickers,
it, she was
I'm
probably
like, she totally, it just blew her mind, which is crazy the way things like that work.
Yeah.
But yeah,
There's also a second one. There's a
There is.
sequel.
Yeah, Curly's brother, twin brother.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that.
Also
now.
good.
Also good.
I know, yeah,
but I think
Also, Jack Palance.
yes. Wait a minute.
I
No.
remember that. This is just silliness at this point, but I remember when he won the Academy Award, I think, for Best Supporting Actor for that portrayal
Oh,
of
wow.
Curly.
Yeah.
Really.
And I remember watching it, and he was an older man at the time, and he got his award, and he got out on stage and did one-armed push-ups on the Oscar stage. I remember
Academy,
that at
yeah.
the award, yeah. But the whole point of that was Curly said, "Secret of life's one thing."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said, "What's the one thing?" And Curly said, "You got to figure that out." Paul figured out. It's Jesus.
Yep.
That's the one thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Really good.
Thank y'all so much for being part of the podcast. Hope to see you next week. We will carry on.
Bye-bye.